Good afternoon. Media Day again. That means it's an exciting time of year for us where we start actually a week from today because we open up on Thursday the 29th at Cincinnati. So we're excited to get going as a group. We've got two outstanding student athletes with us today. Our running back, Josh Kelly, who's over there in the corner. He's the quiet kid that doesn't smile very often. He's really tough to get to know. Josh, I'm talking about you, buddy. You good? How you doing? And then over here, we got one of the real true leaders of our defense, Chris Barnes, who had an outstanding season for us last year, and we're really expecting big things out of Chris. So with that, we open it up to some questions and fire away.
All right, again, gather around coach and student athletes for the next 25 minutes for questions.
Hi, guys. How are we? No, we're not dictated by the record. You know, we have a plan going in, and we'll always follow that plan. So everything's been planned out in detail for the entire season, and you know, we got to play the games and see how we stack up against the teams that we're going to play. But the record doesn't dictate changing any plans that we have for ourselves. I mean, I don't know what's healthy, not healthy. I don't, you know. Like when I was a freshman, I was worried about where I was wearing to school the next day, let alone was I offered by scholarship by a school that really didn't mean I was offered, you know. I think 10 years ago, when you got a letter of interest from a school, the new norm now is to just offer them a scholarship. So, you know, somebody says he can play, we're throwing an offer. So, you know, I think for us, when we offer somebody, we need to know a lot about their academic background because we're a difficult school to get into. So it's not fair to a student athlete to offer him a scholarship and then tell him a year later you can't get in, you know. So, you know, we've wasted a year of his time coming over unofficially, spending time with our school. We've wasted a year of our time with someone that we really can't recruit. So there's a lot more that goes into it. I think David at Stanford has a little bit of the same approach. So when you have some academic standards at your universities, I think when you're offering people, you better make sure that those guys that you're spending time with are kids that are actually going to be able to get into your school. So I don't think it's a unique approach, but I think it's, you know, we don't want to waste time. We don't want to waste student athletes' time, nor do we want to waste our own time. So we need to find out a lot about the student athletes from a background standpoint, because that's really the reason that they're going to get admitted to the university. So. No, I think there's a lot of kids out there, and it's some kids go early, some kids goes late. There's not a set way to doing it. You know, we do our due diligence, and Justin's done a great job. You know, really excited about the freshmen we have coming in now, and obviously can't comment on kids that are being recruited, whether they've committed to us or have committed at other places.
Coach, what is your take on the transfer portal? You've had kids come in and kids leave via the transfer portal.
Yeah, I think the transfer portal is a good thing. I mean, if kids go somewhere and they're not happy there, then they should be allowed to go where they're going to be happy. So I mean, coaches move. I don't know why players can't move. So I've never had a problem with the transfer portal. So, and I don't understand that argument, you know. So it's sometimes it's not the same thing. A kid may have gotten recruited by one coach and a new staff comes in. Well, why does that kid have to stay? You know what I mean? So I think the transfer portal is good, and I think the players, they just need to know all the facts, because just because you go in the transfer portal doesn't mean another school's going to offer you a scholarship either. So I think they need to do their homework on their end so that that they're not caught and left out in the woods. But I don't have an issue with the transfer rule. Did Ben ask you to ask that question? No, I understand that. We just a joke because Ben asks about momentum all the time. So, Well, again, I think each week is a season. So I think how you prepare on a weekly basis helps you win on a weekly basis. And you really don't know. We went out and played Stanford after that and lost. So you could argue that the momentum didn't even follow into the next week. So part of it is I think our players understand, and you can look back at that game and learn from it, is that we had a really good week of preparation, and we played really well on that Saturday. So you can tie that correlation together, and there's evidence for the players to kind of look back on what was your preparation like that game week, and then how did we perform that game week. And I think you can build from that. But to think, our last 6 games, we had over 400 yards of offense and all these other things. You still have to go out and do the work, and that's what I think this group we have right now really truly understands, that they've worked extremely hard over the summer. And we're excited to get on the field with them next Wednesday and really start in earnest to play a really good Cincinnati team. And that's kind of what we'll talk about. But you learn from the past, and you can study it a little bit. But I think if you spend too much time in the past, you become irrelevant in the future. So we're not really talking about last year at this point in time now. We're on to the 19th season.
Man, I know you had the infamous Billy Vanilli history means nothing quote.
I again attribute that to Ben. So.
Did you sense the second half of the season that things were turning around?
Yeah, I think our players, the kids we had at the end of the year, we obviously had a lot of injuries, but the kids we had at the end of the years understood what it took to win, and it takes focus every single day, and because every week you're going to have to play a real formidable opponent, so you got to be able to crank it up each week. There's not an off week, you know what I mean? And when you look at our schedule, playing at Cincinnati was 11-2 and a really good San Diego State team, and then playing Oklahoma and then getting into league play. There's not an easy game. There's not a, hey, this game's going to help us prepare for anything else. So I think what we've learned and what we need to grow upon is that how you prepare on a weekly basis affects how you play on that Saturday. And whether if you had a good week the week before, you learn from it, but you can't kick your feet up and say, hey, we don't have to really prepare as hard this week because we won last week and momentum's going to take care of us. That's just not going to happen.
Both Chris and Josh mentioned your saying of habits reflect the mission. Mm-hmm. I know you said that also when you were in the NFL, some of your teams. What does that mean to you as a coach?
I just think if you're everybody's on a mission, no matter what it is, and everybody's mission is different. But if you want to be successful, then your habits have to reflect your mission. So there's a lot of people that say, New Year's Day, I'm going to get in shape and I'm going to go to work and I'm going to do anything, and it lasts for 3 days, and then, they're buying chips and soda at the store 3 days later. Well, their habits don't reflect their mission. So you all figure out what your mission is, and then your habits need to reflect that. So that's all we're just trying to emphasize, making good choices. And when you have an opportunity to be presented, like we all are with decisions during the course of the day, do your habits reflect what your mission is? So.
Do you feel like your team got kind of the gist of it?
I think so. I think the group we have right now, I really like them. I like the way they work. I like their mindset. I like their how they approach it on a daily basis, and I think that's gotten across to these guys, and they understand that.
Larry Scott has said that they might have 9 a.m. kickoff games. You were an early proponent of those early morning practices. Could that early kickoff, could that have an effect on...
I'd kick off at 6 a.m. When you wake up, if you're a college football player or coach, you want to wake up and you want to play football. So the hardest thing with Saturdays is when you wake up and then you got to wait till 7 o'clock at night. But we're also big on, we don't control our schedule and when we kick off, so tell us where it is and when we're kicking off, and we'll be there. So if he wants us to play at 9, we'll play at 9. If he wants us to play at 7 o'clock at night, we'll play at 7 o'clock at night. If he wants us to play at 6 in the morning, play at 6 in the morning. That part, that's, we always talk about control the controllables, and we don't have a control over kickoffs, so they tell us when to play, we'll play. But we practice in the morning, so we're morning people. We'd love to do things in the morning. I don't know if our fans would, but I don't have a vote, so I don't care. Just tell us when we're kicking.
Coach, talk a little bit about the virtual reality facility tool that you're having installed at Wasserman, and what does that offer you?
I just think it offers the quarterbacks a little bit more training. It hasn't been put in yet, so we're waiting to see the final product before we can get moving on that. But it's just another way to train your quarterbacks, and ability to get them reps. A lot of different schools have used different versions. We have a kind of a newer version, and I'll be able to give you a little bit more background after we get it up and running. I think that's the plan, but right now we haven't. It's not finalized, so we haven't been able to actually use it. So
I think some of the guys. Oh.
He's been good. Again, we haven't been with him since last spring, so our strength coaches have had great reports with him, and He's got the one thing about Dorian I've always loved is he's got an unbelievable work ethic and he's always thirsty for something else and wanting to get better. And he's been doing it, since we ended on April 20th was our last practice with him. So now we kind of turn him over to the strength coaches and, in terms of running and all those other things, he's done a really good job. And we're excited as a staff to get back with Dorian and all of our players on next Wednesday. So.
Some of the guys talked about you bringing in someone to teach them how to play chess.
Yeah, there's a guy that's come over to our complex that's, talked to them. It's just an optional thing for our players. Some guys have gravitated to it, other guys have not. So it's just an opportunity to kind of expand how they think and what they do. And it's a fun thing to do, probably better than playing video games. So good lifelong skill to learn.
Do you think that kind of correlates, like you have to think ahead a few
Yeah, but it's any game where you have to think, I think, is going to help stimulate you cognitively. And if that helps stimulate you cognitively, then I think it's beneficial to you. So.
Chip, why do you think so many coaches are more open to starting true freshmen at quarterback these days?
Because they have to.
Out of necessity?
Yeah, I think it's a necessity, a lot of situations. So usually necessity is the mother of all inventions. So I think a lot of times when you don't. This past year, Dorian was our number 2 quarterback, and Wilton went down in the second quarter. So who started week 2 was the guy who finished week 1. But I think it'd be great. Back in the old days, everybody got redshirted. No one played as a freshman. But there's also kids are a lot more talented, I think, and they've been exposed to more things at the high school level because the level of high school coaching has gotten better. So I think there's kids that can step in and play at the quarterback spot earlier in their careers. It used to be in the NFL that rookie quarterbacks didn't play in the NFL, but they're all playing in the NFL. I think it's all kind of the whole system has sped itself up. But I think the reason why most of them can is I think the coaching at the high school level is really, really good. And it's not a foreign language when they get to college. They've done a lot of things that are necessary to be a quarterback at the college level. So.
And just to compare that, when you were first getting started in college as a recruiter, how often would you come across a high school senior that you felt like could make that jump?
Not really. I mean, we actually redshirted Marcus, at Oregon. Now he was our number 2 quarterback for the entire season. So if we had an injury, we would have played him. But we didn't. We were fortunate enough that Darren played great for us, so we didn't have to play Marcus. But I think every freshman wants to play when they're a freshman, and then when they get to a senior, they all wish they were redshirted and had another year. So I think the new redshirt rule is actually beneficial because about 20 of our kids played last year in game experiences, but played 4 games or less. So we had the opportunity to redshirt them, and they get a chance to kind of do it over again. So I think the NCAA was really smart in that. We were a team that really took advantage of it, especially late in the year when we had so many injuries. And where normally you wouldn't have played those kids in games like that because you didn't want to waste a year of eligibility on them. But we had kids play meaningful snaps in the SC game and the Stanford game, and that was beneficial to these kids because they're still going to be freshmen when we start next week. So I think that rule has really benefited guys. And you almost can do it at the beginning of the year is see what they can do, and if it's good, maybe you shut them down after 4 and say they're not ready, or you continue like he is ready, but it gives you an opportunity to not play. It used to be if they play 1 snap, it counts as an entire season. So I think there was more that went into the decision before. I don't think now, knowing that you have a little leeway, and say we can throw a kid out there and see what he can do, and if it's good, all right, we'll continue. If we don't think he's ready, then maybe we can pull it back. So I think the approach with the new rule has kind of changed things, to be honest with you. Yeah, I don't. That wasn't what it wasn't more to give. I think it was more to learn and to grow. When the National Football League is a grown man's league, and when you get one opportunity, when you get there, and are you ready to go? Like Josh didn't start for us till really our 4th game into the season. So I think there's a lot more experiences that he needs as a player that's going to benefit him, and I think it's going to make him a more viable candidate going into the league this year. So. And I just shared that with him. So it's not more to give, and it's nothing about giving. Like Josh has given everything he's had to the university. So our job is to help prepare him for an opportunity after this. And I think that this extra year will help benefit him. 2 years ago, he was at UC Davis. So he had less than 3/4 of a season playing collegiate football at a Power 5 level. And that's a big jump coming from Davis. And then the jump from Power 5 school to the NFL is a huge jump. And if you're not ready for it, you got about 30 days to prove yourself. If not, you get cut. And there's that one day in the beginning of September when rosters go from 90 to 53 and 37 guys on 32 teams get cut and their dreams are over. So You only get that opportunity really once, maybe twice, but you better make sure that when you get that opportunity, you're prepared. So I think under another year with Deshaun, who's got great experience, and had an unbelievable career at the National Football League, another year with Deshaun is going to be really beneficial to Josh. So that's kind of what our conversation was about. He can do a lot of things, third down, pass pro, catching balls out of the backfield, being a viable weapon in the passing game. There's a lot more nuances to playing running back than just, how many yards did you gain? Can you actually stay on the field on third down? Can you pick up appropriately in pass protection, not only in technique and skill, but recognition? And those are all things where, a lot of times to give Josh a blow last year, we had him out on third down. So doesn't have, even though he played, I don't know how many snaps during the season, there weren't a ton of third down reps for him, but that's something that we can expand to put on his plate this year a little bit more. And that will expose him, because the game at the NFL is, I think it was the first time this year that they threw the ball more than they ran the ball in the National Football League. So it's a pass protection, running back, route running league right now. And you better be good at all those things if you plan on playing beyond college.
Chip, what's an example of something that you clearly see different in year two as opposed to trying to establish in year one?
Just familiarity. Like our players know how we practice, how we train, how we meet, how we take notes, how we communicate as a group, the whys and wherefores of what we're doing. And then it's incumbent upon the guys that have been here last year to kind of help the young guys assimilate to that, where a year ago, everything was a first. Everything was the first meeting that we had, the first practice that we had, the first away game that we had, the first road trip that we had, so all of those things that sometimes you take for granted that kids don't know, like, what is the system on game day? Like, what time are we up and when are we eating, and all those other things have already been established, and our routine has been established. So now that they know where they're supposed to be and when they're supposed to be there, then let's get into the hows and the whys of what we're trying to get accomplished. So I think the familiarity is the big thing that will really benefit us going into year two. So.
What's your thoughts about the conference officiating, wanting more transparency?
I think that's a good thing. I didn't feel like they weren't transparent, maybe with the public, but I think all leagues are moving to that. The NBA talks about what calls were made in the last 2 minutes, and there's other people kind of moving towards that. Yeah. I think that's a more fan-oriented thing. As the coaches, we moved on to the next game, so, we get feedback immediately on Monday in the NFL, and then we move on. So, if it's beneficial to the fans and they're concerned, the one thing that's going to happen, though, they're never going to take a call back. You can talk to the Saints about that. They're not taking a call back, so I don't know how that makes anybody feel any better, to be honest with you. I think that just probably, to me, it pours a little bit more salt in the wounds with, we missed that call. All right. We still lost the game, but so.
Was feedback with the league office good last year?
Yeah, as from a coaching staff, we've never had an issue. Dave Coleman has been fantastic. Whenever we've called and asked him a question, he's always given us, and all we all want to know is just, how are you guys going to call this? That's it. You don't have to agree with the rule or disagree with the rule. It doesn't matter, Some people think they should be able to drive 75 miles an hour, but if there's a policeman on the road with a gun out like that, you're going to take your foot off the gas, right? So you can disagree or agree with all you want. All you want to know is, how are they going to officiate it? So are they going to allow you to go 68? Then you can go 68. Or are they going to hard line it at 65? That's all you want as a coach. So and Dave has always been very good with the communication with us. And as a staff, we always just ask, what's your interpretation of this? This call was made. Can you tell me why it was made? All right, let's move on.
Coach, how big a deal is establishing the run and stopping the run in your program?
I think there are some things in football that kind of depends on who you are. You know what I mean? So it also depends on the week. What's the weather like? So how important is establishing the run when it's a torrential downpour? I think it's probably really important, because we're not going to be able to throw the ball as much as we want to throw the ball that week. So I think I've been in games where we've run it 50 games one week and thrown it 50 times the next week. So there'd be another game where you say, hey, our plan right now is we're going to establish the run and stop the run, and then all of a sudden you're down 21 in the first quarter. Well, you're going to have to throw the ball more to catch up in that game, even though your plan going in is we're going to establish a run, but we couldn't establish a run because we had a punt return for a touchdown, we had a fumble that was returned for a touchdown, and now we're in a really big hole. So I think you go into a game plan of how you want to attack a defense, but you also have to understand the down and distances and the score at the time of it. So there's not, hey, we're going to do this and we're going to do that, just because the other team has a plan too. So you got to kind of be able to react to that.
In general, is the emphasis on that different in college versus the NFL?
No,
as far as you...
I know in the NFL for the first time this year they threw the ball more than they ran the ball, and that's the first time. But in college, it's all over the map. Like if you're at Washington State with Mike, they're going to throw the ball more than they're going to run the ball. I mean, that's just what they do. You know, that's his mindset and his tenet of what he does, and it's been very, very successful for him.
Why in the NFL, as I'm sure you know, there's sort of been this de-emphasis of the running back position. Like guys have a hard time getting a second contract. Maybe they're not drafted as high as they were in the past. Whereas in college, you know, you were just talking about Joshua Kelly. He's kind of the centerpiece of your offense. That's the case at a lot of schools. Why do you think that difference exists between college and the NFL game?
Yeah, the difference exists in the NFL is there's a set amount of money you're allowed to spend. So you have to allot how are you going to spend it. So you're going to give X amount of chunk, hypothetically, to the quarterback position. Then who's the quarterback throw it to, who protects the quarterback, who rushes the quarterback, and who defends the receivers. So now when you get through there, you still haven't talked about your running back yet. So it's the same thing with why does the left tackle make more than the left guard? Because that's just the nature of the game. That doesn't mean the left guard isn't as good as the left tackle, but when you only have X amount of money to cut up between 53 guys, how are you going to cut that money up? You know, when it's a fascinating study, but it's a pay-for-play league, and it depends on what position you are to how much they have to pay you. And it doesn't mean that one position is more important than another position, because you do have to be able to have a threat of the run and all these other things, but you have to figure out in the NFL what you can get away with not paying as much as some other spots. And it's interesting, but it doesn't mean that one position is de-emphasized. It's just you only have X amount of money. You know, in baseball where you can go over the cap, and football if you could go over the cap, then you'd see running backs get maybe featured a little bit more and paid a lot more.
Coach, I'm curious your thoughts on the national perception of the Pac-12.
We've got about 3 minutes remaining with UCLA. 3 minutes.
I think we have to think about what our job is on a daily basis and not be concerned with the other aspects of it. And if we do a good job daily and we end up winning games, then we deserve to be talked about. But if we don't end up winning games, then we don't deserve to be talked about. So I think it's a meritocracy from that standpoint. I don't think there's a bias one way or the other. I think they talk about teams that win, you know, and if you win, then you'll be talked about. So you should focus and worry about winning as opposed to what people are talking about. So. Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of them. Alex Anderson is an offensive lineman for us. John Gaines is an offensive lineman for us that played like that. Kyle Phillips is a wide receiver for us that we got an opportunity to play. Greg Dulcich is another receiver, tight end for us that got an opportunity to get in games and play some a little bit. David Preby's a tight end that got in and played some games. Elijah Guidry in the secondary. Rashad Williams in the secondary. We got a chance to kind of get those guys in and get their feet wet a little bit. So there's a lot kind of over through the course of, you know, what we got an opportunity. It was more wide out, some O-line guys, and some DBs. Some of the other guys, the D-line had to play. You know, there's a couple of O-linemen. Chris Murray had to play and deserved to play because of where he sat on our lineup. But, you know, there's about 10 or 15 of those guys that got great experience last year, and then hopefully they can build upon that. So. Martell? Yeah. I mean, I think he's a really versatile player. I think he's, you know, and again, he feels a lot more comfortable in what we're doing. Because of our depth at running back, when we lose in Bolo and Soso, you know, Herb's had to play the entire year for us, so we didn't get the opportunity to redshirt him. But I think he's kind of expanded his game a little bit, understanding the difference between first down and third down, pass protections, a lot of things that Josh is working on. Kind of Martell was in the same spot just because it was his first year in the system too. So we hope, you know, he continues to grow because I think he could have a real impact because we're going to have some other guys besides Josh. This isn't going to be a one-man show at the running back spot next year.
What did you see from Darnay Holmes during spring?
You know, really good leadership. I think on our team, Darnay is kind of a go-to leader because Darnay walks the walk before he talks the talk, and his work ethic and mindset, I think, is special. You know, and there's a maturity to Darnay that I think is rubs off on a lot of the younger guys. They kind of gravitate to him. I think he enjoys that mentoring role and really takes it to heart. But the first and foremost with Darnay is he walks the walk first. There's nothing that he tells another player to do that he hasn't done himself. And I don't know if we have a more dedicated guy to the game of football and to just being a good person, a good student, a worker, everything. And Darnay kind of epitomizes that. He's done a really good job in the classroom. He's going to graduate in 3 years. I mean, he's done it in every walk. It's not just he's into one thing, not the other. He's done it in everything. So he has the ability when he talks, he's done it. And I think the players really respect him for that. I'm not familiar. I'm not on Twitter, so I do not know what you're talking about. No, that's new to me. So I'm not I'm not a. I'll tell you when I tweet. What's my hashtag? 0? Hash mark? I've met Mick, yeah. I know his reputation. I know guys that have coached with him, and and the small interaction I've had with him, I think he's outstanding, and I think he's going to do a really, really good job. So I'm excited to see his teams play because I know.
All right, that'll conclude this session with UCLA.
They're going to be a really tough
the coaches and student athletes will be
team,
available for additional one-on-one
like
at 4:15.
So I think it's going to be exciting to go watch them play. All right, guys. Thank you.